For our toes and heels, on this particular frame, the Algonquin or Huron style or Maine or Michigan style frame, there is a rounded toe and then a pointed heel section. But you also have bear paw style shoes that are round at both the toe and the heel, or you have Ojibwe or Cree style shoes that are pointed at both the heel and the toe. So whereas Gilpatrick's book refers to them as toe instruction and heel instruction, I'll refer to, in these videos, I'll refer to the instruction as instruction for rounded toes and heels or for pointed toes and heels. The instruction for rounded toes and heels and pointed toes and heels is almost identical. The pattern is the same. The only difference is the setup. There's a bit longer of a setup for the rounded ones to fill out the top here. We're going to do 3 passes until we fill out the whole tip, whereas on the pointed ones we only do 1 pass and then we get right into the pattern. So the setup is a bit longer on the rounded ones. I'm going to start with that. If you have pointed toes and heels, you're using Ojibwe or Cree style shoes, then you can just skip this video entirely. And if you have bear paw shoes with rounded toes and heels, then you'll use this video for all 4 sections of your pair of frames. So we're using the 250 line here. I like to do the toes and the heels without any crimps. There's not a whole lot of weaving here, so it is manageable to do it with a single length of line without having to crimp any on. But if you do have to crimp, that's not the end of the world, and we do include some smaller diameter cable crimps with our kits for that purpose. So I'm going to go with a dozen coils here. Obviously smaller shoes could get away with fewer coils. We'll start here in the bottom left, tie on with the triple half hitch. I'll tuck that tail into a couple of front ties as well to keep it nice and clean. Okay, so I've just tied on to this little diagonal piece of edging line right here in the corner. When we pass the edging line, just like with the body when we pass the frame, we'll almost always go over the edging line, so we'll come down around the edging line. Unfortunately, there is one exception where we'll come bottom up, but I'll point that out later. For the most part, we'll always come down around the edging line. So we're going to go across the frame and down in this little corner pocket here. When we come back up, we'll be putting a half twist into this line. And that twist, it's important that that twist occurs in the right way. If you twist it the wrong way, when we try to weave later, the weaves will end up slipping down into the twists. If you have it twisted the correct way, then the twists will lock that weave in place. And so to twist correctly, you always bring the line back up to the opposite direction of where you'll be moving next. So in this example, I'm here in the bottom corner. I'm going to head up here to the front of the frame next. So when I bring my line back up, I'll make sure that I bring it up to the rear of this previous strand. So I'll bring all that line back up here to the rear. And you can see then when I pull the line across to the front of the frame, there will be a little twist down here. And that's what you're looking for. You're always looking for that little half twist in the line. Okay, we're going to step away from the snowshoes for a minute. I'm going to try to explain a couple of concepts for the toes and the heels here on the whiteboard. We'll see how this works. In black, I've drawn the frame of the snowshoe, so this is just showing the toe section. I've got in green the edging line. If you can't see that green, it doesn't matter. It's not that important, but there's some edging line installed around the toe. Now, every time we go across the frame of the snowshoe in any direction, when we get to the other side, we're going to grab the edging line. So we don't go around the frame, we just go around the edging line, and we almost always, there's one exception that I'll get to, but we almost always go over the edging line. So we go down around the edging line, and as we go down and around the edging line, when we come back up, the direction that we come back up on is important. And we always come back up in the opposite direction of where we will be going next. So by that I mean, if we come across here to the right side of the frame, and our next move is going to be up here to the front of the frame, then when I grab the edging line, I'm going to come back up around the edging line to the rear of the weaving line, so that when I make my move up here towards the front of the frame, I'll have a little cross in the lines right here. So as another example, if I come up to the front of the frame and I grab the edging line here, if I know my next move is going to be down here to the left side of the frame, then when I grab the edging line, I'll come back up to the right, so that as I make my move to the left, I'm going to put that little twist in the line. Show that once more. Down here, if I grab the edging line and I know my next move is coming across here to the right side of the frame, then I will come back up here to the left, so that when I pull the line across, I will have that little twist in the line. Okay, so that's 3 examples of how it should look. I'll give an example of how it shouldn't. If I come here to the right side of the frame and I know my next move is going to be towards the front of the frame, the incorrect way would be to come just straight back up and go straight there to the front of the frame, and you can see no twists in the line. Okay, so the direction that we come back up is important. These lines need to be twisted the right way. If they're twisted the right way, then later when we bring lines through there, they will get caught up nicely in that twist and they'll get locked in position. Okay, so pull that tight. Now we're coming up here to the front, just right in the middle of the edging line. Now I'll go down. Okay, so I passed down around the edging line. My next move is going to be here to the left side of the frame. So when I come back up, I need to come up here to the right of the previous strand, so that I'll end up having that little twist. And I can pull that tight. Most of the principles here in the toe and the heel are the same as what we dealt with in the body. One of our principles was that we would always go over the first type of strand we encountered and under the second type of strand. Here we're going to pass this horizontal strand. It's the first type of strand we encounter, so typically we would go over. In the setup here, there's one exception. We're going to pass under that line. So this is an exception to that rule. Otherwise, we typically are going to be following that rule of over first and under second. Okay, so we passed under this horizontal. We're going to go right into this same corner pocket that this first strand was tied onto, but we want to go to the rear of it. So it's a bit of a tight space. This is a bit hard to show, but I'm going to take this first strand and I'm going to push it forward quite a bit. Okay. Even though I've got that tucked, I'm going to pull that out so it doesn't distract us too much, that little tail. Try to get it out of the way. So I'm going to push this first strand forward, and then I will go down into this little corner pocket, And when I come back up, I'll come up between this original strand and the most recent strand here. So I'll just come up into this little space here. So what I've done here is you can see there is a twist in the line itself, just like I've twisted it everywhere else, but this previous strand is completely independent. I haven't twisted it up at all, so it still moves on its own. Now I'll come straight across the frame to the right side of the frame, and I'll go down in the same corner pocket to the rear of this original strand, and I'll also come up to the rear of itself. So I came up to the rear of everything. Now I haven't started to describe what pattern we're doing here because this is actually still the setup. The setup for the toe and the heel are a little bit longer than they were for the body. If you recall the body setup, we just built this heavy main line. We went down to do a single rear tie in the middle at the back, and then we got right into our pattern. With the toe, we'll actually be doing 3 passes around the toe of setup before we get right into our pattern. So it's a little bit more involved here. So I've come up to the rear. That's going to give me my little bit of a cross here. My next move is up here to the front left side of the frame. En route, I will pass 2 types of strands. I will pass a horizontal strand, and I will pass a upright or diagonal strand. So we'll get back to our basic principles of going over first, under second, go over the horizontal, under the diagonal. And now I'm meeting the edging line right where the edging line also meets the frame. And whenever that happens, I'm going to grab the edging line on both sides of that, I call it a corner for lack of a better term, or that intersection where the edging line meets the frame. So in this case, I want you to go down here to the left of that intersection, and then back up here to the right of that intersection. So that is going to give that same little half twist in the line that we've been doing, but now that half twist is right around that intersection, and that's really nice because this one cannot move, whereas this previous strand can be moved around a little bit. It's nice to have a few grab these intersections, and they almost act as our landmarks to keep things from shifting around too much. Okay, so I'm up here in the top left. Now I'm coming down here to the bottom or the rear left, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'll grab this same intersection. So I want to go last time. I'll go down in this same little corner pocket, but then I'll come back up here to the front of that little intersection. Okay. So again, I've got a little twist in the line here, and that little twist is right around that little intersection where the edging meets the frame, and it does not get caught up with any of these other previous strands. It's completely independent of those ones. Okay. I'm going to head here to the rear right to grab that intersection. As I make my way over, I will go over the first type of strand I encounter, that's this upright, and then I'll go under 2 up lefts which I encounter. Over and under. I'm going to go down around the edging line to the front of this intersection and come up in that little corner pocket to the rear of that intersection. The order is important here so that we maintain that little half twist in the line every time we cross the edging line. From the bottom right, we're going to go up to the top right. We're going to grab this final intersection here at the front. We'll go down to the left of it, up to the right of it. Okay, and now we are basically done our setup. We're going to head down and we'll start our pattern down here. But I just want to talk about what we've done. For our setup here, you can see we've basically laid on 3 parallel triangles. So there's not much crossing of lines. We just went around 3 parallel triangles. If this was a wider, like a square toe, a Tikamek style shoe, then we might continue on for 5 parallel triangles, or even 7 or 9 parallel triangles if we were doing a really, really fine weave. For the pointed toes, like we have here, then it would be a shorter setup with only 1 triangle before we got into the pattern. So that's the difference between the rounded and the pointed toes and heels. But once the setup is done, the pattern itself will be the same. So let's get down to start the pattern.